Beauty of Hollywood, 21-4. 3. Gospel music has a way of reaching people that most art forms never quite manage, and for nearly 2 decades, the Gaither Vocal Band stood at the center of that world, filling arenas with harmonies that made grown men weep and entire congregations rise to their feet without anyone telling them to. But the story most fans never fully heard was the one happening backstage, behind the smiles and the spotlights, where 2 men were quietly holding each other up through one of the most demanding careers in Christian music. Guy Penrod and Wes Hampton shared that stage, those overnight bus rides, those quiet prayers in hotel rooms before performances, and eventually one of the most difficult decisions a singer can face. Penrod's voice was not the kind you forget easily. Joining the Gaither Vocal Band in the mid-1990s, his baritone became the sound listeners most closely associated with the group within a short time. His long hair and commanding stage presence made him instantly recognizable, and for more than a decade, he stood at the center of concerts in churches, theaters, and arenas across the country, leading thousands of people through worship experiences that felt larger than any ordinary performance. Audiences saw a confident performer pouring his heart into every lyric, eyes closed, voice filling the room with sound that people described as being inside a church service even when they were sitting in a commercial arena. What they rarely saw was the man exhausted on a tour bus at 2 in the morning, hours removed from one performance, and already heading toward the next city. When Wes Hampton joined the band in 2005, the circumstances surrounding his arrival carried real pressure. David Phelps, the tenor he followed, had built a reputation that extended well beyond gospel music circles, and longtime fans were watching closely. Hampton understood exactly what he was walking into, and rather than shrinking from the comparison, he let his natural warmth and bright tenor voice do the work. Within a fairly short time, audiences stopped measuring him against his predecessor and started responding to what he brought on his own terms. His joyful stage energy connected with people in a way that felt completely genuine, and the chemistry between him and Penrod became something fans noticed without needing anyone to draw their attention to it. The friendship between Penrod and Hampton grew through the grind of touring, long rehearsals, overnight travel, and back-to-back weekend performances in different cities created a closeness that is difficult to build any other way. Before concerts, the group would gather backstage to pray together, and those quiet moments became as important to both men as anything that happened under the stage lights. They saw themselves as ministers first and performers second, which meant every concert carried a spiritual responsibility that went well beyond simply hitting the right notes. That shared sense of calling deepened the bond between them and kept them grounded through schedules that would have worn down almost anyone not tied to something bigger than the music itself. The physical cost of that life accumulated slowly and then arrived all at once. Penrod had performed through exhaustion many times before, pushing forward because he believed in the music and the people making the effort to show up and hear it. But somewhere in those final months before his 2009 departure, his body began sending signals that could no longer be written off as ordinary tiredness. The moment that forced everything into clarity came during a rehearsal when he struggled to catch his breath in the middle of singing. Doctors who examined him afterward identified serious vocal strain compounded by deep physical exhaustion, and their message was direct. Continuing at the same pace risked permanent damage to his voice. The decision to leave was not made quickly or without genuine grief, but once he understood what was at stake, Penrod recognized there was only one honest choice available. The announcement reached fans in early 2009, framed in polite professional language mentioning new opportunities and personal projects. Speculation followed, including suggestions of backstage conflict or creative disagreements. None of it landed anywhere near the truth. What Penrod described when looking back was not simply a health crisis, but a deeper recognition about what relentless worship ministry had done to his inner life. He admitted there were stretches when he felt he was singing louder than he was actually listening, when the pressure to perform for thousands each week had pulled him away from the quieter spiritual habits that made the music genuinely meaningful. Stepping away was not only about resting his voice, but about recovering something harder, to name the personal faith that had started everything before the stages and the recordings and the expectations. For Hampton and the remaining members, Penrod's departure left a real gap, not just in the vocal blend, but in the daily rhythm of the group. They stood behind his decision without hesitation, which revealed something meaningful about the kind of friendships that touring ministry builds when it works the way it should. Hampton continued growing as a central figure in the group, his bright tenor holding the upper harmonies in place, while they kept finding their way into the churches and concert halls that had always been the natural home for music, rooted in faith and scripture. Penrod's return came at a pace he set himself, building solo projects that kept him close to his family while still allowing him to share the faith that had always driven his career. People who followed his work during that period noticed something different, a quality of honesty that felt earned rather than projected, as though the time away had cleared whatever distance had gradually grown between him and the music. The years Penrod and Hampton spent together remain one of the defining chapters in what the Gaither Vocal Band built across its long run in gospel and Christian music. Behind every harmony that moved, an audience was a relationship built on shared prayer, shared exhaustion, and a shared belief that the music was genuinely worth whatever it cost.